A Hells Angel biker took in 3 abandoned children. 25 years later, the shocking truth came out. That's what everyone believed. A tough biker saving 3 little kids left alone in the cold. For years, the children thought he rescued them out of pure kindness. A man with a broken past who suddenly found a reason to be good. But on their 25th anniversary, everything explodes. A hidden file shows he wasn't supposed to save them. He was paid to take them. And now, the same people who ordered it long ago, the ones who wanted those kids gone forever, are back. They want the children returned. They want the truth buried. And they'll stop at nothing. What was this biker really protecting all those years? The kids he raised? Or the secret that could destroy them all? And when the truth finally comes out, will their family survive it? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows of Silver Ranges Community Center as Ava Holt balanced on a stepladder, carefully hanging a hand-painted banner that read, "25 Years of Love." Thank you, Dad. Below her, Micah steadied the ladder while Jonah arranged black and silver balloons, their father's old motorcycle club colors, now transformed into party decorations. "Remember how scared we were that first night?" Jonah asked softly, tying off another balloon. "All huddled together in that old cabin?" Ava smiled, securing the banner's corner. "I mainly remember the hot chocolate he made us. Who knew a tough biker could make such good hot chocolate?" "With those little marshmallows he'd packed special," Micah added, his usually serious face softening at the memory. Dad may have looked scary, but he sure knew what 3 frightened kids needed. The community center was slowly transforming into a celebration space. Old photos lined the walls, snapshots of their life growing up off the grid in Gunner's remote cabin. There were pictures of fishing trips, homeschool sessions at their weathered kitchen table, and the day they finally moved into town so they could attend regular school. "Found another box of decorations," called Mrs. Martinez, their former 3rd-grade teacher, as she entered carrying supplies. The whole town had pitched in for the celebration. Silver Range might be small, but it had embraced Gunner and his adopted children fully, despite, or perhaps because of, their unusual beginning. Ava climbed down from the ladder, brushing dust from her jeans. "I still can't believe we pulled this off without him finding out. Dad notices everything." "Sheriff Jensen's kept him busy all day with that made-up security consultation at the station," Micah chuckled, though knowing Dad, he probably figured it out weeks ago and is just letting us have our moment. As the afternoon wore on, more townspeople arrived to help. They set up folding chairs, arranged platters of food, and shared their own stories about Gunner. The gruff ex-biker had become a respected member of their community, known for fixing anything mechanical and always being there when someone needed help. "Your dad helped tow my car during that big snowstorm 2 winters ago," said Tom from the hardware store. "Wouldn't take a dime for it either." At exactly 6 o'clock, they heard the rumble of Gunner's old Harley approaching. Everyone quickly took their places, and Ava felt her heart swell with emotion. The double doors opened, and there stood their father. Tall, weathered, his gray beard neatly trimmed for once, wearing the clean denim jacket they'd left out for him that morning. "Surprise!" The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Gunner stood frozen for a moment, his tough exterior cracking as he took in the scene. His eyes, usually sharp and alert, grew misty as he spotted the banner and photos. Several of his old motorcycle club friends, now settled family men themselves, stepped forward to clap him on the back. "You sneaky kids," he managed to say, his voice rough with emotion. "Didn't think I'd live to see the day when throwing a surprise party for an old Hell's Angel would be cause for celebration." Jonah stepped forward first, embracing their father. 25 years since you found us, Dad. We wanted to celebrate that. The party moved into full swing, with people sharing meals and memories. The siblings had arranged for a local barbecue joint to cater, knowing their father's love for good brisket. As people ate, they took turns telling stories about Gunnar and the impact he'd had on their lives. Finally, it was time for the siblings' speeches. Micah went first, his steady voice carrying across the room. Most folks would have seen 3 scared kids as a burden, he said, but Dad saw us as a chance to do something right. He taught us everything: how to fix engines, how to survive in the wilderness, how to be good people. Every day I use those lessons in my shop and my life. Jonah spoke next, his gentle manner drawing everyone in. Dad showed us that family isn't about where you come from. It's about who chooses to stand by you. He chose us every single day, even when it wasn't easy. When it was Ava's turn, she felt tears prickling at her eyes. 25 years ago, a man with a rough past made a choice that changed 4 lives forever. Dad, you didn't just rescue us that night. You gave us a home, an education, and most importantly, your heart. You showed us that it's never too late for redemption, never too late to change your story. Gunnar stood to speak, uncharacteristically emotional. These kids, he said, his voice thick, they saved me as much as anything I did for them. Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. He looked at each of his children in turn. I'm proud to be your father. As the evening progressed, the Aush celebration began to wind down. People started heading home, each stopping to hug Gunnar or shake his hand. Ava, wearing her event organizer badge, felt overwhelmed by the day's emotions and stepped outside for some fresh air. The parking lot was quiet, with just a few cars remaining. The summer evening was warm, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of sage from the surrounding desert. Ava closed her eyes, taking deep breaths, feeling grateful for her unusual but loving family. Ava Holt? She turned to find a young woman approaching her. The stranger was probably around her own age, professionally dressed despite the casual setting, with an intensity in her eyes that made Ava uneasy. My name's not important, the woman said quietly, glancing around to ensure they were alone. I'm an investigative journalist. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small flash drive. There's something you need to see. It's about that night, the night your father found you. Ava's hand trembled slightly as she took the drive. What do you mean? The files are encrypted. Watch them privately. Without another word, the journalist turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness beyond the parking lot's lights. Ava stood there, the flash drive feeling impossibly heavy in her hand, as crickets chirped in the warm Nevada night. Behind her, she could hear the last of the party guests saying their goodbyes, but her mind was fixed on the small device and its mysterious contents. The morning sun streamed through the barn's converted windows, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floor of the Holt family kitchen. Ava hadn't slept a wink, the flash drive burning a hole in her pocket all night. Dark circles rimmed her eyes as she nursed her 3rd cup of coffee, waiting for her brothers to arrive. The familiar crunch of gravel announced Micah's truck pulling up outside. Minutes later, both her brothers settled around the old oak table that had witnessed countless family meals and discussions over the years. The kitchen, with its mix of rustic charm and modern appliances, felt smaller than usual this morning. You look terrible, Micah said, studying his sister's face with concern. He was already dressed for work at his auto shop, his hands bearing the permanent traces of engine grease that no amount of scrubbing could remove. Jonah, still in his sleep clothes, reached across to squeeze Ava's hand. What's going on? Your text seemed urgent. Ava pulled out her laptop and the flash drive, her hands shaking slightly. Something happened last night after most people left. She recounted the strange encounter with the journalist, watching her brother's expressions shift from curiosity to concern. "Did you check what's on it?" Micah asked, his protective instincts clearly kicking in. "Not yet. I wanted us all together." Ava inserted the drive into her laptop. After a few clicks, a password prompt appeared. She said it was encrypted, but Ava tried a few combinations before typing in Silver Range. The files unlocked. "That was almost too easy," Jonah murmured, leaning closer. Dozens of folders appeared on screen, each labeled with dates from the late 1990s. Ava clicked on the first one, and scanned police reports filled the screen. Missing children reports, investigation notes, bank records. "These are about us," Micah said, his voice tight. "Look at the dates." Ava's heart pounded as she opened another folder. This one contained what appeared to be coded messages, the kind bikers might use to communicate about routes and jobs. But these weren't about routine runs. They were about children. About payment. "No," Jonah whispered, pointing at a specific entry. "Look at Dad's old road name." There it was in black and white, a contract with ghostwriter Gunnar Holt, detailing payment terms for acquiring 3 specific children. Their descriptions matched perfectly: a 6-year-old boy, a 4-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old boy. The silence in the kitchen grew heavy as they stared at bank statements showing transfers of large sums of money from numbered accounts to one labeled GH Operations. "This can't be right," Ava said, her voice cracking. "Dad rescued us. He's always said he found us abandoned." "These documents say different," Micah replied, his jaw clenched. He pointed to another file, a series of surveillance photos showing a younger Gunnar meeting with men in expensive suits. "Look at the time stamps. This was taken 2 days before the night he supposedly found us." Jonah, usually so quiet, pushed back from the table. "We need to talk to him. Now." "Wait," Ava said, grabbing his arm. "We need to be careful about this. If these records are real..." "If they're real, then everything we thought we knew about that night is a lie," Micah finished, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Through the kitchen window, they could see Gunnar in his daily routine, throwing feed to the chickens that roamed the backyard. He looked so normal, so familiar in his worn jeans and flannel shirt, that it was hard to reconcile this image with the documents before them. "Together," Ava said firmly. "We do this together." They found their laptop and headed outside. The morning was warming up, but Ava felt cold inside. The chickens scattered as they approached, sensing the tension in the air. "Dad," Micah called out, his voice steady despite the emotion Ava could see in his eyes. "We need to talk." Gunnar turned, feed bucket in hand, and something in their expressions made him pause. "What's wrong?" Ava stepped forward, holding out the laptop. "Someone gave me this last night at the party. It's about the night you found us." She swallowed hard. "Except according to these records, you didn't find us at all. You were paid to take us." The feed bucket slipped from Gunnar's hands, spilling corn across the dirt. His face, usually so stoic, crumpled. The transformation was heart-wrenching. In seconds, he seemed to age 10 years, his shoulders slumping under an invisible weight. "Dad?" Jonah's voice was barely a whisper. Gunnar looked at each of them in turn, his eyes filled with a pain they'd never seen before. When he spoke, his voice trembled. "You better come inside. It's time you knew the truth about that night." The chickens pecked at the scattered feed as the family walked back toward the house, the weight of 25 years of secrets hanging between them. Inside the familiar comfort of their living room, the atmosphere felt anything but comfortable. Gunnar lowered himself into his worn leather recliner, the same chair where he'd read them bedtime stories and nursed their childhood fevers. Now, it seemed to swallow him whole as he sat there, looking smaller than they'd ever seen him. The siblings arranged themselves around him, Micah leaning against the fireplace mantel, Jonah perched on the arm of the sofa, and Ava sitting cross-legged on the floor like she used to do as a little girl. The laptop sat open on the coffee table between them, its screen still displaying the damning evidence. "I never wanted you to find out like this," Gunnar began, his voice rough with emotion. His weathered hands trembled as he clasped them together. "Back then, I was at rock bottom. The club was everything to me, but I was drowning in debt. When they offered me the job..." He paused, swallowing hard. "I told myself it was just another run." Ava watched tears form in his eyes, something she'd only seen once before, at her high school graduation. "What changed?" she asked softly. Gunnar looked up at the ceiling, gathering himself. "I was supposed to pick you up from a contact at this old gas station outside of Reno, but when I got there..." His voice cracked. "You three were just sitting there, huddled together on a bench. Micah, you were holding Ava's hand so tight, and little Jonah was asleep in your lap." Micah shifted uncomfortably, fragments of that night surfacing in his memory. "I remember being scared," he said quietly. "You looked at me with these huge, terrified eyes," Gunnar continued, "and something just broke inside me. All I could think was, what kind of monster trades children for money?" He wiped roughly at his eyes. "I knew right then I couldn't do it. Couldn't hand you over to whatever they had planned." "So you ran?" Jonah asked, leaning forward. "Grabbed you three and just started driving. Didn't stop until we were deep in the mountains." Gunnar's hands clenched into fists. "Cut all ties with the Angels, changed my name, kept us moving for 5 years until I was sure they'd lost our trail. That's when we settled here in Silver Range." Ava reached out and touched his knee. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" "How could I?" Gunnar's voice broke. "You looked at me like I was your hero, the man who saved you. How could I tell you I was originally part of the plan to take you?" His shoulders shook, with suppressed sobs. Every birthday, every Christmas, every proud moment, there was this voice in my head saying I didn't deserve any of it, that someday you'd find out the truth and hate me for it. The room fell silent except for Gunnar's ragged breathing. Ava looked at her brothers, seeing her own tumultuous emotions reflected in their faces. The initial shock and betrayal were still there, but something else was growing stronger: understanding, and perhaps even deeper love. Micah was the first to move. He crossed the room and knelt beside their father's chair. "Dad, you did save us. Maybe not in the way we thought, but you chose us. You chose love over everything else." "You gave up your whole life to protect us," Jonah added, his voice thick with emotion. "Taught us about faith, about doing what's right no matter the cost." Ava stood up and wrapped her arms around Gunnar's shoulders. "We don't hate you, Dad. We love you more for telling us the truth." Gunnar broke down then, truly broke down, wrapping his arms around Ava as Micah and Jonah joined the embrace. They stayed that way for a long time, letting 25 years of hidden fears and unspoken love flow between them. Later that evening, after a quiet dinner where they'd managed to find some normalcy again, they stepped out onto the back porch. The Nevada sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. A cool breeze carried the scent of sage and desert flowers. "We should let that journalist know we're not interested in any story," Micah said, leaning against the porch railing. "This is our family business, not some exposé." "Agreed," Jonah nodded. "We've dealt with it. We're okay. No need to drag it all into the public eye." Ava pulled out her phone to draft a message, but before she could start typing, it buzzed in her hand. A text message appeared from an unknown number. "There's more. You need to see me. Tomorrow 9 a.m., the old library." Her hands tightened around the phone as she showed the message to her brothers. The peaceful moment shattered, leaving them all wondering what other secrets might be waiting to be uncovered. The setting sun cast long shadows across their faces as they stood there, the warmth of their reconciliation with Gunnar still fresh, but now tinged with a new uncertainty about what tomorrow might bring. The morning sun hadn't yet burned through the fog as Ava pulled into the abandoned library's cracked parking lot. The building's boarded windows and faded "For Sale" sign made her stomach twist with uncertainty. Micah's truck idled nearby, her brothers watching from inside. "You sure about this?" Micah had asked earlier. "We could all go in together." But Ava knew a crowd might scare the journalist away. Now, stepping out of her car, she spotted Elias Ward leaning against the building's wall. He looked different in daylight, younger than she'd expected, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes and rumpled clothes that suggested he hadn't slept. "Thank you for coming," he said, pushing off the wall. His voice was quiet but urgent. "We need to talk somewhere private." Ava gestured to the empty lot. "This seems pretty private to me." Elias glanced nervously at the street. "Not private enough. I've been followed the past 2 days. Inside, please." He produced a key and led her through a side door. Dust motes danced in the weak light filtering through cracks in the boards. Empty shelves created shadowy canyons in the vast room. "I'm guessing you saw the initial files," Elias said, setting his laptop on an old circulation desk. "About Gunnar and the kidnapping contract?" "Yes." Ava crossed her arms. "We've dealt with that as a family." "That was just the surface." Elias's fingers flew across the keyboard. "The syndicate that ordered your kidnapping? They're active again, and they still think they own you, especially you, Ava." Her throat went dry. "What are you talking about?" "Look at this." He turned the screen toward her. "Birth records, DNA databases, private investigator reports. You weren't random victims. The syndicate specifically wanted you because of your biological connection to the Blackwood family." "The Blackwoods?" Ava frowned. "The political dynasty from Georgia?" "Exactly. There was a scandal they needed to bury. A pregnancy that would have ruined their perfect image. You were supposed to disappear into their trafficking network, but Gunnar saved you instead." Ava's hands trembled as she scanned the documents. Medical records, genetic markers, old newspaper clippings about a debutante's mysterious European travel that coincided with her birth date. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because they're coming for you again." Elias lowered his voice. "The syndicate has modernized, infiltrated digital systems. They're powerful enough to make people disappear through completely legal channels now. You and your brothers need to be ready." A loud bang from outside made them both jump. Just a car backfiring, but Elias's fear was contagious. "I should go," Ava said, backing towards the door. "My brothers are waiting." "Take this." Elias handed her a USB drive. "It has everything: evidence, contacts, safe houses. Don't trust any official channels. They have people everywhere." Ava hurried out to where Micah and Jonah waited in the truck, her mind spinning. She climbed into the back seat, clutching the USB drive. "Well?" Micah asked, turning around. "Drive," she said. "I'll explain at home." But home had changed in the hour they'd been gone. Ava's phone buzzed with banking alerts. All their accounts were frozen. Micah's auto shop website displayed an "under investigation" notice. Jonah's teaching credential was suddenly "under review." Worst of all was the message spray-painted across their front porch in bold red letters: "Return what is ours." Gunnar met them at the door, his face grim. "Pack your bags. You 3 need to leave town." We're not going anywhere without you, Micah said firmly. This isn't a debate. Gunnar's voice was hard with fear. I got you into this mess 25 years ago. I won't let them hurt you now. We're stronger together, Jonah argued. Running splits us up, makes us vulnerable. They spent the afternoon in tense discussion, jumping at every sound outside. Ava shared Elias's revelations, while Micah tried unsuccessfully to access their accounts. Jonah documented everything with his writer's eye for detail, creating a timeline of events. As evening fell, they gathered around the dining table, their usual place for family meetings. The power had been flickering for the past hour, clear signs of tampering with the lines outside. We need a plan, Micah said, his face illuminated by candlelight as another power surge dimmed the lights. We need allies, Jonah added. People we can trust absolutely. What we need, Ava said quietly, is to understand what we're really up against. This isn't just about us anymore. If what Elias said is true, there's a whole network of corruption we've stumbled into. Gunnar sat with his head in his hands, the weight of 2.5 decades of secrets finally catching up to them all. The lights flickered again, longer this time, casting strange shadows on the walls. They sat there in the unreliable light, a family bound by love and choice rather than blood, facing a threat they barely understood. The message on their porch had done its job. They felt marked, hunted. But as another power surge made the lights dim and brighten, they stayed together at that table, refusing to be separated by fear. The morning sun filtered through the dusty attic window as Ava, Micah, and Jonah carefully moved boxes and old furniture. They had woken early, determined to search every corner of their home for clues about their past. Dad never comes up here anymore, Jonah said softly, running his hand along a wooden trunk. But he used to spend hours organizing things when we were kids. Ava sneezed as she shifted a stack of moth-eaten quilts. There has to be something. He wouldn't have destroyed important documents. Micah worked methodically in the far corner, tapping the floorboards with his mechanic's precision. Listen to this, he called out. It sounds hollow. His siblings hurried over as he pried up a loose board, revealing a metal lockbox tucked into the space beneath. It was heavy, weathered with age, but still solid. Should we wait for Dad? Jonah asked, but Micah was already carrying it downstairs. They found Gunnar in the kitchen, coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips when he saw what they carried. I guess it's time, he said quietly, pulling a key from the chain around his neck. The lockbox creaked open to reveal carefully preserved documents. Birth certificates, newspaper clippings, and a thick manila envelope marked Evidence. Your birth parents, Gunnar explained, spreading the papers across the kitchen table. They were brave people. Too brave, maybe. Ava picked up a newspaper article dated 25 years ago. The headline read, Local activists missing after filing discrimination complaint. They were investigating a trafficking network, Gunnar continued, his voice rough with emotion. One that specifically targeted black children from struggling families. Your parents gathered evidence, interviewed victims, tracked money trails. They were getting close to exposing some powerful people. Jonah studied a photo of a young couple standing proudly in front of a community center. What happened to them? They disappeared 3 days after hiding you kids at that gas station. Their car was found at the bottom of a ravine, but... Gunnar's hands trembled. The bodies were never recovered. Micah's jaw tightened. And the people responsible? Protected, connected, the same ones who hired me to grab you. Gunnar's eyes filled with tears. I was supposed to deliver you to the syndicate. But when I saw you three huddled together in that bathroom stall, Ava trying so hard to be brave, you boys clinging to her, I couldn't do it. Something broke in me that night. The siblings sat in stunned silence, processing this new layer of their story. Their birth parents hadn't abandoned them. They'd died trying to protect them, and others like them. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Ava asked gently. "Fear." Gunnar's voice cracked. "Pure fear. I thought if we stayed quiet, lived simple lives, they'd forget about us. And maybe I was afraid you'd hate me when you learned the truth about what I almost did." Jonah reached for his father's hand. "We could never hate you, Dad." By early afternoon, they had decided to visit Pastor Raymond. The elderly minister had been Gunnar's confidant during those early years, helping them stay hidden while Gunnar worked to build their new life. The church was quiet, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. Pastor Raymond welcomed them into his study, his kind face creasing with concern as they shared their discoveries. "I remember those first months," he said, settling into his worn leather chair. "Gunnar was so lost, so angry at himself. He'd come here late at night, wrestling with his conscience, trying to understand how God could use someone like him to save 3 innocent children." The pastor smiled at the memory. "He was still wearing his Hells Angels vest the first time he showed up. Told me he needed to change, but didn't know how. We prayed together, and then he asked me something I'll never forget. He asked if God could really forgive someone who'd done terrible things." "What did you tell him?" Jonah asked softly. "I told him that God's grace is bigger than our mistakes, but true redemption requires action. The next day, he sold his motorcycle, bought that land outside town, and started building your home." Pastor Raymond leaned forward. "I watched him transform from a man of violence to a father, of tremendous love. It wasn't easy. He made mistakes. But his heart changed completely." As evening approached, they returned home to find Gunnar in the kitchen, stirring a pot of his famous beef stew, the same meal he'd made the night he first brought them home. "Comfort food," he said gruffly. "Thought we could use it." They gathered around the table, passing bread and ladling stew into bowls. The simple meal felt sacred somehow, a reminder of all the quiet dinners that had bound them together as a family. "Whatever happens," Micah said, "we face it together." A notification sound broke the moment. Jonah pulled out his phone, frowning at the screen. "It's an encrypted email from an unknown sender." The others watched as he opened it. His face went pale. There on the screen was a photo they'd never seen before. Their birth parents standing on the steps of a courthouse, holding documents and smiling with determination. The caption beneath it chilled them to the bone. "They died for this, will you?" The phone clattered onto the table. Steam rose from their bowls of stew, forgotten now as they stared at the image of the parents they'd never known, and the threat that had followed them for 25 years. The morning sun cast long shadows across Sheriff Martinez's office as he reviewed the documents spread across his desk. Ava, Micah, and Jonah sat quietly while he flipped through their evidence about the syndicate's threats. "I understand your concern," the sheriff said, removing his reading glasses. "But without concrete proof of current criminal activity, my hands are tied. These documents are 25 years old." "What about the vandalism? Our frozen accounts?" Micah leaned forward, frustration evident in his voice. Sheriff Martinez sighed. "The bank claims it was a technical error, already resolved, and vandalism, while concerning, isn't enough to launch a major investigation." He looked at them sympathetically. "Best I can tell you is stay vigilant, document everything, and call us immediately if you feel threatened." The siblings exchanged disappointed glances. They'd hoped for more, but understood the sheriff's position. "We appreciate your time," Ava said, standing to leave. "One more thing," the sheriff added. "I knew your father, the old Gunnar. What he did for you kids? That changed him. Changed this whole town, really." They nodded. touched by the acknowledgement, but worried it wouldn't be enough to protect them now. That afternoon, Ava sat at her desk in the local library where she worked as a research coordinator. The quiet atmosphere usually brought her peace, but today every footstep made her tense. Mrs. Chen, her supervisor, appeared at her desk. "Ava, there was a man asking about you earlier." Ava's heart skipped. "What kind of man?" "Well-dressed. Said he was an old friend, wanted to know your schedule." Mrs. Chen frowned. When I refused to give details, he got pushy. Security escorted him out. Hands shaking, Ava texted Micah about the incident. His response came quickly. "Get home now, someone tried breaking into the shop." She gathered her things, explaining a family emergency to Mrs. Chen, and hurried to her car. The whole drive home, she checked her rearview mirror obsessively. At Micah's auto shop, police tape marked where someone had attempted to force the back door. Tools were scattered across the floor inside, though nothing appeared stolen. They were looking for something specific, Micah explained, as they examined the scene. Went straight for the office, ignored all the expensive equipment. Jonah arrived minutes later, face tight with worry. "This is getting real, fast." They regrouped at home, gathering around the kitchen table where they'd shared so many family meetings before. Gunnar sat with them, his weathered hands wrapped around a coffee mug. "We can't just wait for them to make the next move," Ava said. "We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." Micah nodded. "Agreed. Starting with why they want you specifically, Ava." "I might be able to help with that," came a voice from the doorway. They turned to find Elias Ward, the journalist who'd started this whole revelation. Gunnar was on his feet instantly, protective instincts flaring. "It's okay, Dad," Ava assured him. "He's here to help." "Let's not talk here," Elias suggested. "I know a quiet place outside town." They chose to take 2 vehicles, Micah's truck and Elias's sedan, to the Silver Spoon Diner, a family-owned establishment on the outskirts of Silver Range. The dinner crowd had thinned, leaving them relatively alone in a corner booth. After ordering, Elias pulled out his laptop. "I've been analyzing those files, cross-referencing with other cases I've investigated." He turned the screen so they could see. "There's a pattern of similar incidents spanning 3 decades. Children disappearing, whistleblowers silenced, evidence buried." "But why target us?" Jonah asked. Elias glanced at Ava. "Because of your DNA." He pulled up an article featuring a distinguished-looking family standing on mansion steps. Meet the Whitmore family. 5 generations of political power in the South. Governors, senators, judges, old money, older influence. Ava stared at the photo, noting familiar features, the same deep-set eyes she saw in her mirror every morning. "Your biological mother worked as a nurse at one of their private clinics," Elias continued. "She discovered they were running a sophisticated trafficking operation, using medical records to identify vulnerable targets. But she found something else too. Proof that one of the Whitmore heirs had fathered a child with a clinic patient. That child was you, Ava." The waitress arrived with their food, forcing a pause in the conversation. Once she left, Elias lowered his voice. "The Whitmores can't risk their political dynasty being linked to trafficking, much less an illegitimate heir. That's why they're so desperate to contain this situation." "Contain?" Micah's voice was hard. "You mean kill us?" "Or worse," Elias said grimly. "They need to recover any evidence and any loose ends, including people who could expose them." They ate in tense silence, appetites diminished by the weight of these revelations. Through the diner's windows, the sun had set, leaving the parking lot in shadow. As they prepared to leave, Ava noticed headlights sweep across the window. A black SUV pulled into the lot, parking with its engine running. "Don't react," Elias whispered. but we're being watched." They paid quickly and split up, heading to their respective vehicles. As soon as they pulled onto the highway, the SUV's headlights appeared behind them. "They're following," Jonah said from the back seat of Micah's truck. Micah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Hold on." He suddenly turned off onto a dirt road, one of many they'd explored as teenagers. The SUV's headlights followed, closing the distance. "There's another turn coming up," Ava said. "They won't expect it." Micah cut the lights and made the sharp turn onto an even smaller track, barely visible in the darkness. The SUV shot past them, its occupants clearly unfamiliar with local back roads. They waited, hearts pounding, until the sound of the other vehicle faded. Then Micah took a different route home, watching carefully to ensure they weren't followed again. It was nearly midnight when they finally reached the house. Elias parked his car behind the barn, agreeing it wasn't safe for him to drive home. Nobody wanted to sleep alone. They dragged mattresses and blankets into the living room, creating a makeshift camp like they used to during thunderstorms as children. But this storm was far more dangerous. Gunnar settled into his recliner by the window, shotgun across his lap. The siblings knew he wouldn't sleep. He'd keep watch all night, just as he had during those first terrifying months after rescuing them. In the dim light, they could see the old fear in his eyes, the haunted look of a man who knew exactly what they were up against. But there was something else there too. Determination. The same fierce love that had made him choose 3 scared children over his old life 25 years ago. The siblings huddled together on their mattresses, drawing comfort from each other's presence as they had so many times before. But sleep would not come easily, not with the weight of their discoveries pressing down and the knowledge that somewhere in the darkness, powerful forces were closing in. The early morning sun crept through the living room windows, casting long shadows across the mattresses where the siblings still slept. Gunnar stood from his recliner, his joints stiff from the night's vigil. He watched his children, no longer the tiny, frightened souls he'd rescued, but strong adults who'd faced every revelation of the past few days with remarkable courage. His weathered hand touched the cross hanging from his neck, a habit he'd developed over 25 years of fighting his demons. The time had come for one final truth. "Kids," he called softly, watching them stir. "There's something else you need to see." They gathered in the garage where Gunnar's old Harley sat, lovingly maintained despite rarely leaving the property these days. He knelt beside it, his knees protesting, and removed a small panel near the engine that looked completely ordinary to untrained eyes. "Kept this hidden since the night I found you," he explained, pulling out a worn leather journal. "Figured if anyone ever came looking, they'd search the house, not the bike." Ava, Micah, and Jonah crowded around their father as he opened the journal with trembling hands. The pages were filled with messy handwriting, some entries tear-stained, others written in obvious haste. "August 15th, 1998, Gunnar read aloud. "Found 3 kids at the Gas and Go outside Reno. Contract said grab and deliver, no questions. Simple job. But their eyes..." His voice cracked. "Youngest boy couldn't stop crying. Girl kept trying to protect them both. Oldest one just stared at me like he knew exactly what kind of man I was." Micah put a hand on Gunnar's shoulder as he continued reading. "Told myself I'd just move them somewhere safe. Call it in. But watching them sleep in the back of my truck, something broke inside me. Keep hearing my mama's voice saying there's still good in me. Still time to choose right. Haven't prayed since she died, but I'm praying now. God help me protect these children." Tears rolled freely down Ava's cheeks as Gunnar turned pages, reading entries that chronicled their first months together. September 3rd. Kids are starting to trust me. Found Jonah's teddy bear at a thrift store today. He smiled for the first time. Ava asked if she could call me Dad. Told her to wait. Earn that name proper first. October 21st. Micah helped me fix the truck today. Boy's got natural talent. Caught myself planning his future, teaching him more. Had to remind myself this is temporary. But my heart's not listening anymore. December 25th. First Christmas together. Made them presents from scraps. Dollhouse for Ava. Toy cars for the boys. Pastor Raymond brought us a real turkey. Said God works in mysterious ways, even through broken men like me. Starting to believe him. The siblings exchanged glances, remembering those early days through new eyes. The journal entries continued, documenting their transformation from terrified refugees to family. March 10th, 1999. Took the kids to church today. Pastor Raymond's been teaching me about redemption. Says Jesus wasn't afraid to love outcasts and sinners. Says it's never too late to change. Looking at these children, I'm starting to understand what he means. Gunnar closed the journal gently. Kept writing in it for years, tracking every milestone. First day of school, first dates, graduations. Reminded myself daily of the miracle you three were in my life. Jonah wiped his eyes. Why didn't you show us this before? Shame, mostly, Gunnar admitted. Wanted you to see me as the man I became, not the one I was. But maybe you needed to know both. See how love can change everything. They embraced him there in the garage, surrounded by tools and memories, their bond stronger for knowing its complete truth. The morning light streamed through the dusty windows, warming them as they held each other. Around noon, Elias called. Ava put him on speaker so everyone could hear. Those files you found in the attic? His voice crackled with excitement. They're exactly what we needed. Your birth parents documented everything. Names, dates, bank transfers. Combined with Gunnar's testimony about the kidnapping contract, we can expose the whole operation. What about the Whitmores? Micah asked. Their involvement is clear in the paperwork. Once this goes public, their dynasty crumbles. My editor's already lined up protection for all of us. We publish, then let law enforcement take over. For the first time in days, hope bloomed in their hearts. They arranged to meet Elias the next evening to hand over all the evidence. As sunset approached, they gathered on the porch with cups of coffee, watching the sky paint itself in brilliant oranges and pinks. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of sage from the desert beyond their property. I've been thinking, Ava said quietly, about our birth parents, how brave they were fighting against something so big and dangerous. Micah nodded. They died trying to protect children who weren't even theirs. We should honor that, Jonah suggested. Maybe start a foundation or something. Help other kids who need rescuing. The idea took hold, growing as they discussed possibilities. A charity that would support adoptive families, fund investigations into trafficking, provide safe houses for children in danger. Could call it the Second Chance Foundation, Ava suggested, for kids who need one, and the adults brave enough to give it to them. They talked late into the night, making plans that felt like prayers, hopes for a future beyond the current danger. When exhaustion finally drove them inside, their hearts were lighter than they'd been in days. None of them noticed Gunnar's absence from their planning session. He paced the upstairs hallway, his footsteps muffled by the old carpet, worry etching deeper lines in his face with each turn. The weight of everything they faced pressed down on him, keeping sleep at bay as he listened to his children's peaceful breathing below. But for the first time since the anniversary party, the siblings slept soundly, their dreams full of possibilities rather than fears. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight, hope had found its way back into their hearts. The morning sun crept through the farmhouse windows, casting long shadows across worn floorboards. Ava stretched and yawned, rolling off the living room couch where they'd all taken to sleeping. The house felt different somehow. Too quiet. Too still. "Dad?" she called out, padding toward the kitchen in her socks. No answer. Micah was already up, frowning at the empty coffee pot. "Haven't seen him yet. His truck's still here, though." Jonah appeared at the bottom of the stairs, face pale. His bed's made, like military corner made, and his phone's on the nightstand. A cold feeling settled in Ava's stomach. She rushed to the garage, already knowing what she'd find. The space where Gunner's cherished Harley usually sat was empty, leaving only oil stains on the concrete. "Guys!" Jonah's voice cracked from the kitchen. "There's a note." They gathered around the kitchen table, staring at the paper in Jonah's trembling hands. Gunner's distinctive scrawl, heavy and determined. "I'll finish what I started. Don't follow me." "No, no, no," Ava whispered, grabbing her phone. "He can't do this alone." Micah was already dialing Elias while Jonah called Pastor Raymond. Within 30 minutes, both men arrived at the farmhouse, concern etched on their faces. "He's trying to protect you," Pastor Raymond said softly, reading the note again. Typical Gunner. Shoulders the weight alone. Elias paced the kitchen, laptop open. "We need to track his movements. When did anyone last see him?" "Around midnight," Jonah said. "He was pacing upstairs while we were talking about the foundation." They worked methodically, piecing together Gunner's trail. Micah called the bank. Gunner had withdrawn $5,000 first thing in the morning. Ava checked with local gas stations, finding security footage of him filling up his motorcycle at 5:30 in the morning. Pastor Raymond made calls to reformed bikers in his congregation. "3 of them got calls from Gunner last night," he reported. "He was asking about old hangouts, specifically the mountain routes." Elias's fingers flew across his keyboard. "The syndicate used to operate out of an abandoned hunting lodge in the Toyabe Range. It was their meeting point before everything went digital, about 3 hours from here." "He would have needed supplies," Micah said, already grabbing his keys. They split up, checking hardware stores and camping outlets. At Jensen's Outdoor Supply, the owner remembered Gunner. "Came in right at opening. Bought rope, flashlights, first aid kit. Seemed in a hurry." By noon, they had traced his path north toward the mountains. Ava's hands shook as she marked locations on a map. "He's going to confront them. Try to end this himself." "We can't let him face them alone," Jonah insisted. "They'll kill him." Pastor Raymond placed a steadying hand on Jonah's shoulder. "I'm coming with you. Known Gunner longer than anyone here. Might need someone he'll listen to." They took Micah's truck, the most reliable vehicle for mountain roads. Elias brought his camera and laptop, determined to document everything. The drive was tense, each mile increasing their anxiety. The mountain roads twisted higher, asphalt giving way to gravel. Pine trees closed in around them, branches scraping the truck's sides. Nobody spoke much, each lost in their own prayers and fears. "There," Elias pointed suddenly. A narrow dirt track branched off, nearly hidden by overgrowth. "The lodge is about 2 miles up." The track was barely passable, forcing them to crawl along at walking pace. Shadows lengthened as afternoon slid toward evening. When they finally glimpsed the lodge through the trees, their hearts sank. It was a massive log structure, weathered and imposing against the darkening sky. Windows stared out like empty eyes, some broken, others reflecting the setting sun. And there, propped against a fallen log, was Gunner's Harley. "He's already inside," Micah whispered, killing the engine. They gathered around the motorcycle, touching it like a talisman. It was still warm, the leather seat holding memories of countless rides, camping trips, ice cream runs. Ava picked up Gunner's helmet, hugging it to her chest. "We have to go in." Pastor Raymond bowed his head briefly, lips moving in silent prayer. Elias checked his camera, making sure the night vision was working. Micah distributed the flashlights they'd brought. The lodge's front door hung slightly ajar, wood warped from years of weather. Beyond it lay absolute darkness, broken only by thin shafts of dying sunlight through the windows. Jonah reached for his siblings' hands, squeezing them like he used to do when they were children scared of thunderstorms. Together? They nodded, forming a tight group with Pastor Raymond and Elias close behind. The first step across the threshold felt like crossing a boundary between their normal world and something far more dangerous. Dust motes swirled in the remaining light. Their footsteps echoed on rotting floorboards. The air smelled of decay and something else. Something chemical and wrong. From somewhere in the building's depths came a sound. Maybe a voice. Maybe something else. The siblings exchanged terrified glances, knowing they couldn't turn back now. Their father was in here somewhere, facing his past alone. Unless they found him first. The lodge's interior was a maze of shadows and decay. Floorboards creaked beneath their careful steps as the siblings moved forward, flashlight beams cutting through dusty air. The building seemed to hold its breath, waiting. "Stay close," Micah whispered, leading the way. His construction experience helped him avoid the worst of the rotting boards. Ava's heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Each room they passed held broken furniture and memories of darker times, empty bottles, old cigarette burns in tables, faded motorcycle club patches. Jonah brought up the rear, constantly looking over his shoulder. The bayous darkness behind them felt alive, watching. Pastor Raymond and Elias had stayed outside to coordinate with someone on the phone. They'd been cryptic about who. A voice suddenly cut through the silence. Rough, strained, familiar. "You won't get away with this." Gunner's words carried down the hallway. "Dad," Ava breathed. The siblings exchanged quick glances and moved faster, following the sound. Another voice responded, smooth and cultured. "We've gotten away with it for 25 years, Mr. Holt. Your noble sacrifice changed nothing." They reached a set of double doors, light seeping through the cracks. Micah held up his hand, signaling them to stop. Through the gap between the doors, they could see into what must have been the lodge's main gathering room. Gunner sat tied to a wooden chair in the center, rope binding his arms and legs. His face was bruised, but his eyes blazed with defiance. 5 men in expensive suits surrounded him. They looked more like bankers than criminals, except for the guns holstered under their jackets. "The children were never yours to save," said a tall man with silver hair, clearly the leader. "The girl especially. Do you know what her existence threatens? What empires could fall?" "They're not children anymore," Gunner spat. "They're strong, good people who deserve to know the truth." "The truth?" The leader laughed coldly. "The truth is, Ava carries blood that could destroy one of the most powerful political dynasties in the South. Her very DNA is proof of their greatest shame. The boys were just unfortunate extras we had to eliminate to hide the trail." Ava pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting back nausea. Micah's jaw clenched. Jonah's fingers curled into fists. "You're talking about murder," Gunner said. "Children, innocent children." "We're talking about protecting a legacy," another man cut in. "One built over generations. We can't let some illegitimate scandal tear it all down." The leader paced around Gunner's chair. "You should have delivered them as contracted. Instead, you grew a conscience, found God." He sneered the last word. "And now your noble choice has led us all right back here." "Then kill me," Gunner said quietly. "But leave them alone. They've built lives, helped people, made this world better." "We don't want to kill anyone," the leader said smoothly. "We just need to ensure certain truths stay buried. Your children's cooperation would make things easier." The siblings had heard enough. They were about to burst in when footsteps approached from behind. They spun, ready to fight, but it was Elias and Pastor Raymond. "Wait," Elias whispered urgently. "Help is coming. We need 2 more minutes." "What help?" Micah demanded quietly. "State police," Pastor Raymond explained softly. "Elias has been working with them for months, building a case. They're surrounding the building right now." Inside the room, the leader had grown impatient. "Where are the files, Holt? The evidence you and your journalist friend gathered?" "Go to hell," Gunnar growled. The sound of a slap echoed through the room. The siblings flinched as one. "Enough waiting," Jonah whispered fiercely. "We're going in." Before anyone could stop them, the siblings pushed through the double doors. The syndicate members whirled, reaching for weapons. "Stop!" Ava's voice rang out. "Don't touch him again." "No!" Gunnar struggled against his bonds. "Kids, run! Please!" But they moved to stand beside his chair instead, forming a protective circle. Micah's construction-hardened muscles tensed for fight. Jonah's eyes burned with determination. Ava stood tall, finally facing the people who had tried to erase her existence. "How touching," the leader said, drawing his gun. "The whole family together one last time." "You're not hurting anyone else," Micah declared. "We know everything," Ava added. "About the trafficking, the cover-ups, the political connections. Kill us, and it all comes out anyway." The leader's finger tightened on the trigger. "Then perhaps we should— Police! Hands up!" The room exploded with movement and sound. Doors burst open on all sides as state police tactical teams swarmed in, weapons raised. The syndicate members froze, caught completely off guard. "Drop your weapons! On your knees!" Elias rushed in with his camera, documenting everything. Pastor Raymond hurried to untie Gunnar while the siblings kept close, unwilling to leave his side even as the chaos unfolded around them. "Are you okay?" Ava asked, touching Gunnar's bruised face gently. "You shouldn't have come," he said hoarsely, but his eyes shone with pride and love. "We're family," Jonah said simply. "We stick together." They watched as the syndicate members were cuffed and read their rights. The leader glared at them with cold hatred as he was led away, but his power was broken. 25 years of secrets were finally dragged into the light. Micah helped Gunnar stand on shaky legs. Pastor Raymond supported him from the other side. Together they walked out of the dark lodge and into the fresh evening air, where red and blue lights painted the trees in alternating colors. The truth had cost them their peaceful life, but it had failed to break them. Standing together under the vast Nevada sky, they were stronger than any conspiracy. They were family. The fluorescent lights of Silver Range General Hospital cast a harsh glow over the white walls. In room 213, Gunnar Holt lay propped up against crisp pillows, his weathered face showing fresh bruises. The steady beep of monitors filled the quiet space as Ava, Micah, and Jonah gathered around his bed, each holding one of his calloused hands. "I'm sorry," Gunnar's voice cracked. "I thought, if I could face them alone, maybe die protecting you, it might finally make up for taking that contract all those years ago." "Dad, stop." Ava squeezed his hand gently. "You've spent 25 years making up for it." Withanasokam nodded, his own eyes glistening. "You taught us everything good we know. How to work hard, how to help others. How to love unconditionally," Jonah added softly. Gunnar's shoulders shook as he tried to hold back tears. "I see those papers sometimes, the ones I signed agreeing to take you. They haunt me. Every birthday, every Christmas. Part of me wondered if I deserved to be there." "You more than deserved it," Ava said firmly. "You chose us. Again and again, every single day. That's what matters." Outside in the hallway, Detective Laura Kim spoke quietly with Elias Ward. her notebook open as she recorded his statement. The siblings took turns stepping out to provide their own accounts of events. "The evidence is solid," Detective Kim assured them. "Bank records, communication logs, political payoffs, it's all there. The syndicate's going down, and they're taking their powerful friends with them." Elias nodded, his journalist's determination showing through his exhaustion. "I've already started writing the exposé. By this time next week, everyone will know the truth." As evening settled over the hospital, doctors cleared Gunnar for release. His injuries were mostly superficial, bruises and rope burns that would heal with time. The emotional wounds would take longer to mend, but they would face that healing together. The drive home was quiet, streetlights painting stripes across their tired faces. When they pulled up to the converted barn, they called home. Pastor Raymond was waiting with a pot of his wife's famous chicken soup. "Thought you might need some comfort food," he said with a gentle smile. "The congregation's been praying for you all day." They gathered around the old oak table, the same one where they'd first learned the truth just days ago. Steam rose from their bowls as they ate in companionable silence, too drained for conversation, but drawing strength from each other's presence. Gunnar watched his children, no longer children, but the strong, compassionate adults they'd become. The guilt that had weighted his heart for so many years began to lift, replaced by profound gratitude. As the clock struck 10, exhaustion finally overtook them. They helped Gunnar settle into his downstairs bedroom, making sure he had water and pain medication within reach. "We love you, Dad," Ava said, kissing his forehead. "More than you'll ever know," Micah added. "Get some rest," Jonah finished. One by one, they climbed the stairs to their childhood bedrooms, Ava's with its faded ballet posters, Micah's with model cars still lining the shelves, Jonah's with guitar picks scattered across the desk. The familiar creaks of floorboards and whispers of wind through trees brought comfort after so much chaos. As they drifted off to sleep, Gunnar's soft snores echoed down the hallway, a sound that had soothed them through countless nights of their youth. It reminded them that they were home, they were safe, and most importantly, they were still family. Some bonds, they had learned, were stronger than any darkness that tried to break them. The night settled peacefully over the converted barn, wrapping the Holt family in its quiet embrace as they rested, together and whole. A gentle autumn breeze rustled through the trees surrounding the Holt family home. 1 week had passed since the confrontation at the mountain lodge, and the morning sun cast warm shadows across the converted barn's weathered exterior. Inside, Gunnar made his way carefully down the hallway, leaning on a wooden cane. Despite the lingering bruises, his eyes held a newfound peace. He paused at the kitchen doorway, watching his children gathered around the table with papers and laptops spread before them. "You kids sure are busy these days," he said, easing into his favorite chair. Ava looked up from her notebook, her face bright with purpose. "I just got off the phone with Silver Range Children's Alliance. They want me to help develop programs for kids in the foster system." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Gunnar smiled, reaching for the coffee Micah offered him. Micah settled back in his chair, running a hand through his dark hair. "I've been talking to some of my old mechanics. We're planning to start a youth mentorship program at the shop. Give troubled kids a chance to learn a trade, maybe stay out of the kind of trouble that—" He glanced at Gunnar. "Well, the kind I might have found myself in without you, Dad." Jonah typed steadily on his laptop, pausing occasionally to jot notes in the margins of a well-worn journal. "The publisher seems really interested in the story, not just what happened to us, but how faith and love can change someone's whole life." He looked at Gunnar with admiration. "Your life, Dad." The doorbell rang, and Ava opened it to find Elias Ward standing there with a stack of newspapers. His face showed the tired satisfaction of a journalist whose truth-telling had finally hit its mark. "It's everywhere," he said, spreading the papers across the table. "Every major network, every newspaper. The syndicate's operations, the political corruption, all of it." He touched one headline gently. "Your courage made this possible. You're helping countless families by exposing this." They spent the afternoon preparing for a small celebration. Micah fired up the grill while Ava and Jonah set up chairs in the backyard. The smell of barbecue drew Pastor Raymond up the gravel driveway, his wife following with a homemade apple pie. "The Lord works in mysterious ways," Pastor Raymond said, helping Gunnar to a comfortable chair. "Sometimes the path to doing good starts in unexpected places." As the sun began its descent, close friends gathered around picnic tables laden with food. There was laughter, real, unburdened laughter, for the first time in weeks. The fear that had gripped them had transformed into something powerful. Purpose. Later, as dusk painted the sky in soft purples and oranges, they gathered around a small fire pit. Sparks danced upward as Ava shared her vision for a foundation that would help victims of trafficking and corruption. "We could call it Second Chances," Jonah suggested, his writer's mind already crafting the narrative. Micah nodded thoughtfully. "Focus on both prevention and healing, education, job training, counseling, and advocacy," Elias added, "to make sure these stories don't stay hidden." Gunnar watched the flames flicker, reflecting on how far they'd come. His children weren't just surviving anymore. They were turning their pain into purpose, their fear into hope for others. Pastor Raymond raised his coffee mug in a quiet toast. "To new beginnings," he said softly. The family joined in, their mugs catching the firelight as they gathered close, surrounded by the love and support that had carried them through their darkest days. The evening air filled with the sound of shared dreams and plans for a future built on redemption's foundation. 6 months later, Silver Range's community center buzzed with excitement. Colorful balloons and streamers decorated the walls, and a large banner stretched across the stage. HI5, Hope in 5. Building bridges, changing lives. The name honored the 5 people whose choices had sparked a movement of compassion. Ava, Micah, and Jonah Holt, their courageous birth parents, and Gunnar, the man whose decision to choose love over darkness had changed everything. Hundreds of people filled the chairs and stood along the walls. Local families, business owners, and supporters from neighboring towns had come to celebrate the foundation's official launch. The energy in the room felt electric with possibility. Ava stepped up to the microphone, her confidence growing with each word. 6 months ago, our family learned that truth can be both painful and healing. We discovered that unity isn't just about blood. It's about the choices we make to stand together, to protect each other, to believe in second chances. The crowd listened intently as she continued. Today, we're not just launching a foundation. We're creating a community where every person knows they matter, where every story of redemption gives others courage to change. When Jonah took the stage, he held his newly published book with trembling hands. "This is called The Night Love Won," he said, opening to the first chapter. His voice grew stronger as he read about the gas station where Gunnar had found them, describing not the fear of that night, but the moment a hardened man's heart had softened at the sight of 3 frightened children. Micah's presentation brought enthusiastic applause as he introduced the first group of teenagers enrolled in their auto shop mentorship program. "These kids," he said, gesturing to the young people seated proudly in the front row, "aren't just learning how to fix cars. They're learning what my father taught us, that it's never too late to choose a better path." The room fell silent as Gunnar made his way to the stage. Gone was the intimidating biker leather of his past. Instead, he wore a clean denim jacket, his silver hair neatly combed, his weathered hands steady on his cane. As he reached the top step, the entire audience rose in a spontaneous standing ovation. Tears glistened in his eyes as he embraced each of his children. The applause grew louder, punctuated by cheers and whistles. This was more than approval. It was acceptance, forgiveness, celebration of a man who had turned his greatest mistake into his most beautiful redemption. The siblings joined hands with their father, facing the hopeful crowd. Community members wiped away tears. Pastor Raymond beamed from the front row. Even Elias, seated near the back, nodded in satisfaction at the story's perfect conclusion. Ava squeezed Gunner's hand and whispered just loud enough for her family to hear. The truth that came out wasn't about what you did, Dad, but who you became. In that moment, standing together before a room full of supporters, they were no longer defined by the secrets of their past. They had become something more powerful, a testament to the transforming power of love, the strength of family bonds, and the hope that blooms when truth and redemption meet. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.